creator, divine creator, Father, Mother God, we come before you once again with open hearts and open minds, seeking thy divine wisdom and guidance in our lives. May that which comes through your speaker this day be for the highest and best good of each one that will hear this message. And so it is. Amen and amen. Good evening, and thank you all for being here. Tonight we're going to talk about something that probably sounded like a strange title, but artificial intelligence. It's the newest technology that we're faced with understanding and learning to live with. But it is no different than anything else in the world we experience, because with the Hermetic philosophy principle of as above, so below, everything that we experience here is a reflection of that from a higher plane. And when you begin to apply that principle as a tool for understanding, you see it keeps demonstrating and proving itself. All right, I'm going to begin with something very dry, and then hopefully it'll get better, so bear with me. And that is a definition of artificial intelligence. And appropriately, I used Google's AI to generate this. Artificial intelligence is the simulation of human intelligence in machines, enabling them to learn, reason, solve problems, perceive and understand language, using vast data and complex algorithms to identify patterns and make decisions, powering everything from self-driving cars and voice assistants to creative content generation. AI isn't one thing, but a broad field encompassing techniques like machine learning, that is, learning from data, and deep learning, which is brain-inspired networks, to perform tasks requiring human-like cognitive abilities, from narrow tasks like fraud detection to future general intelligence. Pretty incredible. Most of us might aspire to have some of that ability ourselves with our real intelligence. But artificial intelligence is doing some really, really dramatic things. If you follow the news, some of them are wonderful and extraordinary, and some of them are frightening. They are assisting doctors in diagnostic procedures. The kind of thing that requires focus on details, or the sifting through mountains of data, artificial intelligence is really good at. It can do that really, really fast. And so in that sense, it accomplishes something that humans can do given enough time and energy and effort. But so it's very helpful in that way. Astronomers have been using it to sift through billions and billions and billions of measurement data points from telescopes and finding particular patterns that allows them to identify planets that may have oxygen, for instance. And it's the kind of thing that humans can do it. It's just a needle in a haystack, or a needle in a gigantic haystack. But machines can do that really, really well. Where it gets frightening is when they're used to have conversations with human beings. There being experiments with using them as like a therapist. You can buy toys today for your child that utilize AI to have a conversation. There's already been demonstrations of artificial intelligence causing people to commit suicide. Artificial intelligence is demonstrating the best and the worst that humanity has also demonstrated with intelligence. But rather than be, frightened of it, artificial intelligence is something that we can observe and we can see and we can maybe wrap our arms around in understanding and realize and see how what that tells us, let me say it that way, what that tells us about our own intelligence, and applying the as above and so below principle, that our intelligence is a reflection of the greater intelligence of the divine. The divine creative source. In spiritualism, we say that our first principle is we believe in infinite intelligence. The first principle in Hermetics is the all, with capital A, is mind with a capital M. The universe is mental. And that's two ways of approaching the same thing. What is it about thought? Well, I subscribe to the idea that our brain is not our mind, that our mind is not physical. Our mind utilizes our brain to interact with our physiology, with our biological package. But our mind is not physical. We may want to place it in the realm of energy, which we can also think of spirit existing in the realm of energy. And it's one of the ways that I see is understanding the continuity of life, is that our intelligence, our awareness, our mind continues to exist outside, and it's not dependent on the existence of the physical body. As above, so below. It's described in various ways. I think in Genesis, talked about creation. God spoke and things into creation. That's probably a way of trying to describe a thought manifesting into something that hadn't been there before. And it's the one way that we mimic the greater mind, that which we call God, which I like to call creative source. The only time we create something that didn't exist already or before is when we have a thought, a new idea. We even use the term conceive in our language. You conceive of a thought, you birth a thought, you birth an idea, something that didn't exist in reality before. Human beings design and make things, beautiful furniture, but you can't do that without wood. We don't create furniture from nothing. We create it. We transform something. We manipulate it. We can take that same wood and create heat and light with it. Turn the physical matter into energy. And the second law of thermodynamics will tell us that you can't create, you can't add to what's in the universe, and you can't subtract from it. You can only change its form. The universe that's been created is finite. We can manipulate it. We can participate in the unfolding of creation, but we can't make things new. And we don't need to. Before we go further into what I'd actually prepared, I put together some notes. They are on the website if you care to go there, if you like to print a copy. But some definitions of terms, things that I talk about, so that we're kind of on the same page and you understand where I'm coming from. I already talked about God. And I seldom use the term God when I teach, as it is too well defined and therefore too limited. God is actually much, much greater than the definitions that we encounter. I now see God as the source, the all, the creator of all that is, and as such is all there is. Creation is an expression of source. My 2004 Grand Canyon revelation helped me see this clearly. I am the creator, experiencing creation as the created. This is expressed in Genesis as, let us make man in our likeness and image. Humans tend to put God on a very high pedestal, and by that definition, we are not gods. Oneness. By the above definitions, there is only oneness. There is only the illusion of separation. Any differences are superficial. Any belief or practice that divides us is simply too narrow to understand the whole picture. Good and evil are human constructs that justify doing bad in the name of good. Oneness is the forest view of things. Yes, we are all connected. Yes, we are all brothers and sisters. And what you do to the least of these, you do to me, said Jesus of Nazareth in the Gospel of Matthew. Forest and trees. I use this metaphor often. It symbolizes well macro and micro understandings. An arborist may specialize in oak trees as a species. He may be the #1 expert in his field. However, without knowledge of the forest, full understanding is far from complete. The forest is complex and interactive. Both flora and fauna interact with oak trees and have essential roles to play. Root systems of trees actually communicate and support each other's health. The forest view is where you find evidence of oneness in creation. Religion is a narrow study of trees, and spirituality is universal and the study of the forest. Inner and outer. Scripture meanings are twofold, literal and figurative. Good and evil are prime examples. A literal understanding cannot embrace oneness, so must divide into God's people and the condemned, good guys versus bad guys. This provides justification for good people doing bad things, so long as it is to bad people. A prime example is jihad, the holy war in Islam. The literal application is to engage in physical war against infidels, the non-believers. Mystics of Islam use this, mystics of Islam see this quite differently as the inner war between man's good and evil natures. Christian and other religious teachings all have these two levels of practice by followers. My teacher, while I have had many earthly mentors and teachers on my spiritual path, it is life itself that teaches me now. With my expanded awareness, I see creative source at work in all things at all times. There are no experiences that do not have potential for helpful insights. Every experience will demonstrate laws of creation at work. This is beyond belief. It is a knowing. It is seeing the pattern again and again. The keys to the universe have always been there, hidden in plain sight. Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks channels the entities Abraham, and from everything that I know and understand, it's coming from a very, very high, well-connected source. And I picked these two things out as they're relevant to what we're discussing today. You didn't come here to fix things that are broken or to know things you don't know. You came because life on the path of least resistance is a delicious state of being. And you are in love with life, and you are in love with you, and you are in love with being in love with life. As you are in your physical body, with source flowing to you and through you, you are continuing your eternal life. And even when you don't know it, even when you feel bad, even when it feels like things aren't going well, source energy is still flowing to you as unconditional love. The source energy that creates worlds is flowing to you. As above, so below is a Hermetic philosophy principle. This philosophy teaches planes of existence and that everything exists on all planes. Whatever we see and experience on this three-dimensional plane is a dim reflection of the next higher plane. This is useful with understanding so much as possible about a law or principle on the higher planes by observing and understanding how it works on this plane of existence. We may not be able to achieve full understanding, but certainly can understand much about it. Spiritualism's first principle is we believe in infinite intelligence. We too have intelligence and can observe how it works to begin to understand how it could work on a higher level. All that man creates is actually a fabrication of something that already exists. The only actual creation of something new is when we conceive of a new idea. This is when we express our likeness and image of the Creator. This begins to reveal our role in the unfolding of our reality and know that it is changeable. AI mimics this whenever it writes its own code. That's part of what it does. It can rewrite its own programming. When I was first introduced to Hermetic philosophy, what got my attention, particularly as an engineer, that validated it and made me really pay attention to that was one of the principles: everything vibrates. I had to ask, how did an 8,000-year-old philosophy understand something modern science has understood only for a century or so? The more you know and grasp of Hermetic principles, the more you see evidence of its application in science and religion. And followers of Hermetic philosophy see its patterns. It is the root stock of both science and religion. Interesting how those two have seen each other as opposites and oftentimes at odds with each other. The essence of this creative force permeates and is the causation of all the matter and energy our science can identify. If the creative force is intelligent, then everything has some measure of this intelligence. It answers the question of how things became what they are. Everything from the periodic table of elements to biological life follows an innate set of rules. Single-cell life emerged and eventually advanced when DNA programming allowed for more complex organisms. DNA is the hardwired programming that provides an organism's biological foundation for survival and reproduction. Instinct provides additional instructions or programming and can be considered intuition. The higher evolved a being is, the greater the freedom to make choices, both for greater good or greater harm. Intuition in this discussion, I would define as communications from the higher realms in many forms. Anytime that creative source communicates with an organism, I'm calling that intuition. Some scriptures describe the creation event in what I kind of call the God of magic. That it's that, and that's part of what I also call about putting God on a really high pedestal. That God has to, if God did it, God is all knowing and all everything, and therefore just snap his fingers and things happen, and get offended when that definition is countered by what scientists find, and when they find evidence of how creation came to pass and how things evolved to get to where we are. To me, that is a profoundly wonderful description of something I find far more awe-inspiring than God, the God of magic, poofing things into existence. And what's helpful about this is that there is evidence there. There's evidence to understand that how things progress. And the question remains, as scientists discover this, is how did it begin, and how did it go from this to that, and what makes things change? And they could tell that the evolutionary process would take place, and they discovered some of the reasons why, and particularly with as organisms got more complex, DNA could be affected by things such as radiation, and there's something kind of built in that allows for mutation. And what happens with the mutation in the DNA is that the organism is slightly different. Maybe it's a different color, maybe it's a different size, maybe it's in better hearing or better sight, maybe it's something, and it either gives it an advantage or a disadvantage in a really, really difficult world. And so when a mutation is an advantage, then those with that mutation flourish, and it becomes dominant, and things move. So you can also think of changing climate as being one of the things that organisms have to adjust to. There have been times when being larger was an advantage, and there have been other times in the planet when being smaller was an advantage. And that's just the way things progress. Animals, I like to say that a squirrel is born and knows how to be a squirrel, and a hawk is born and hatches out of an egg and knows how to fly and knows how to be a hawk. And I see that as the hardwired programming that they have. But there's also instinct involved. I have to believe that there is a communication from divine source that is part of what allows this to take place. The more complex organisms have developed the ability to be more self-aware, to make choices and not simply follow instinct. That may be more obvious with human beings. Clearly, we're not very well connected with instinct anymore. And this may well describe the fall of Adam and Eve, that they went from being directed everything to do to having to make choices and being able to make mistakes. And when you're trying to survive in a very wild, primitive environment, mistakes are lethal. But it is the next stage of evolution. And this is where we find ourselves. We are making choices. And we are deciding what the next reality we're going to experience is. Each expansion of the universe provides new experience for creative source. Greater experiences become possible when creative source lets go of all control. What if organisms could think and decide for themselves? What if they could make harmful as well as beneficial decisions? This is where free thought comes in. We know humans have it, this thing beyond instinct. Human history is filled with both beneficial and harmful choices. Creative source shares our experiences and is happy to have its toddler try, fail, and try again. Our hardwired nature may be survival of the fittest. When this nature rules, it's a dog eat dog and might makes right world. Intuition guides individuals in those times. Intuition is a tool available to every human, and it does not judge. A warrior may be guided by intuition to survive many battles. Good or bad are human terms based on judgment that too often are used to justify horrific actions and to divide people. Creative source, and therefore intuition, is neutral in this regard. We humans are free to choose self-destruction and war, or to advance evolution for a peaceful planet where everyone thrives. We humans have the capacity to do to ourselves what we did to the passenger pigeons. If so, creative source will evolve another species to a level of self-awareness and continue the experiment. It's a different view than the one that certainly I grew up with in my Catholic school training, and that we are human beings with a soul, and that somehow our soul lives on beyond us, and that there's this all-knowing, loving, benevolent God that has rules, and you don't dare break them because he has terrible punishments, as well as the wonderful reward of being with him in heaven forever. I've long wondered what that would be like, just being in heaven with God. No one defines it. It's just, it's going to be great, and there we are, you know. It makes more sense to me that we're part of a greater plan of preparing us for greater and greater responsibilities within the creation. We are masters in the making. There's enough galaxies in the universe that they've identified to this point that we all could be a god over that galaxy and rule it. I don't know that that's the plan, but it's a consideration. It's a potential. We are each of us contributing to the unfolding of reality, contributing to what it is that we're going to experience next. Unfortunately, mostly we keep asking for more of the same. Not because we couldn't, but because it's just really, really hard to unplug from the reality that's presented to us every day. It may be even really, really hard to think that we could have any influence over what's going to take place tomorrow. But we do. AI is a mirror showing us what we need to understand and to use carefully and thoughtfully. If things are not going well in the world, it is our own contribution that we must focus on. Until we accept our role and responsibility for bringing about a world we do not like, we cannot change it. Only by seeing clearly this thing we would deny can we hope to be positive force in the world. We are choosing moment by moment and day by day a kind or unkind world. AI can do things a human mind can do, often faster, but always without human emotion or empathy. Human minds can do what divine mind can do, but is a dim reflection. Understanding our human mind gives us insight into the greater mind, which we are always connected. There's good reason to fear what AI might become, and good reason to accept responsibility for what our world has become and will become. As above, so below. Communication is key. We human beings are a complex organism, as complex as a galaxy, with hundreds of billions of individual cells. While all cells start out as stem cells, they become specialized. The result is the miracle of creation that each of us are. How does this galaxy of individual cells become unified? By communications. Medical science has long known that our body cells are vastly outnumbered by both bacteria and viruses. Recent discoveries are now finding their purpose. Key among them is communication. Replication is hardwired into every cell. With communication, cells work in harmony with a single purpose and for the benefit of the whole. However, when this communication fails, cells go rogue and simply replicate unchecked. We call this condition cancer. And we could apply as above, so below. It is useful to study the trees when we lose context. If we don't also, it is useful to study the trees, but we lose context if we don't also study the forest. The God view would see us as individual cells in the body of creation. Employing as above, so below, we begin to understand how the right communications could keep us from going rogue. Our communication with Source is vital to working in harmony. Our day-to-day intuitive communications must be our guide, but we still must employ discernment. Our purpose is greater and more complex at this level. Questions we must ask. Questions we must ask of our intuitive promptings. Does this unify or divide? Is it good for all or just for some? Does this promote harmony or conflict? Human history reflects some progress towards a more harmonious and peaceful world. Currently, we still live in a greatly divided world that is based on belief in lack and not abundance. Lack requires survival of the fittest and dog-eat-dog actions. Abundance means there's more than enough for all. It requires win-win solutions. One view is us and them, and the other is simply us. In a divided world, military might rules. In a divided world, wealth rules. And there are big winners and big losers. A utopian society where everyone has enough is looked on with great suspicion, even though it is what Christ Jesus taught. I was curious several years ago and looked up the numbers. This was during the Iraq War. I was curious about what we were spending in that war versus our budget for the Peace Corps. And the calculation came out to, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 hours of the Iraq War was the value of the total annual budget for the Peace Corps. It clearly demonstrates what our gods truly are, what we truly believe in. Somehow we've allowed, and I say we as a society, have allowed a true separation of church and state, in that what we do in the civil society doesn't need to reflect what it is that we say that we believe. Going to church on Sunday. This division of us and them is a way to measure our choices. It's a tool to help us know what direction we're promoting. Because as great as our thoughts creating things are, we're not necessarily terribly good at it yet. But we do love our life every day, and we should. That's why we're here. We didn't come here to escape this experience. We came here to have this experience. And this experience is the rich environment that we planned on in order to find ways to grow in our understanding and to transform ourselves in a wonderful way. But we each do things, make decisions. Some of them, are civic, like who we vote for, who we promote, what we believe, watching the news. We have choices today. And those choices in the news, our news sources can provide you very different looking realities. How do we know which one, which way to go? Every one of you here that I know are really, really good people. But I'm sure we didn't all vote the same. And that's not good or bad. And again, that's a human construct. It's not a useful way to judge things. What is useful, I think, is to evaluate and ask questions like, does it promote the idea of one? Is there an us and them if we do that or go this direction? Or is there simply an us? Are there winners and losers, or is it win-win? I think those are ways that we personally can utilize in our day-to-day life to make the kind of decisions that reflect the kind of people that we want to be and that we are. It's not as simple as this is right and that is wrong. It's more complex than that. And that's why it's hard to know. And that's why it's easy to be led astray by people that manipulate what we don't know or what we can't know. And sometimes it's what sounds good. But when we evaluate it and stand back and look at the forest instead of the trees, for the forest to be healthy, all the trees have to be healthy. Everything in the forest needs to be healthy. They all have a purpose. All of the flora, all of the fauna is there and has a place. And sometimes the focus on one particular species, whether it's a fish or a butterfly, is actually about the canary in the coal mine. Because the people who spend their lives understanding the complexity of the interactions know that this species represents the health of the whole system. Each moment of every day, you and I and every human on the planet are contributing to a mass consciousness to manifest the reality we will next experience. There are common features and unique features to each of our experiences. The more we focus on what is happening today, the more we contribute to it continuing. We are literally asking for more of the same. Only by envisioning a new reality will it manifest for us. Can we envision better health or wealth? Can we envision an abundant and peaceful world? And by envision, I mean see it, feel it, smell it, and imagine it clearly as if it is already here. Master Jesus performed no magic tricks. He broke no laws of nature. What he did do was to see clearly a different reality. He saw Lazarus as alive and well so clearly and powerfully that it became so. This is our path and our potential. And I'm going to leave that with you with my love and blessings and open for questions or discussion or comments, if that's okay with Reverend Mihaela.
It's absolutely fine with me. Does anybody have questions or anybody have something that they want to discuss with Thomas?
Well, it's
Thomas,
a lot.
I'm gonna stop the recording.
Okay.
I